Hello, hello. It's Elizabeth Busby here. Thank you so much for joining me for this Discerning Marriage podcast. My guest today is someone so special to me. This woman not only is like the queen of liturgical living on the internet, objectively, like that's not even my personal opinion. Other people have this opinion too. But she also mentored me through my engagement like 7 or 8 years ago. And there are so many things about marriage that were way harder than I was expecting them to be, and parenting that were way harder than I was expecting them to be. And having this woman's guidance at the front end of getting into my vocation has made a significant difference. And it is so wonderful to see all that God has done in her work and her ministry. And I am delighted to be able to share her with you. Most of you probably know her, but if you don't know her, you are in for a treat. May I introduce Kendra Tierney. Hi, Kendra.
Hi, thanks so much, Elizabeth. It's really awesome to be here with you and to, think back on all those years ago. And it's just a thrill to see, how everything has progressed in both of our lives.
Amen. Thanks be to God. So for those of you who don't know Kendra, I'll give her a little bit of an introduction. She created the brand Catholic All Year. I don't think you intended it to be a brand, but it exploded. The Lord, you gave your yes, and the Lord exploded this thing. And it's huge now. But it's called Catholic All Year, and it's basically how she started with how she lived the liturgical year in her home with her kiddos. And it's become this, how anyone can live the liturgical year in their home, in their life, can bring the liturgical year into their day-to-day, and can really make the richness and beauty of the church come alive. So it's been deeply impactful for me too. I grew up, my sweet mama, who was my Catholic parent, my dad converted later, she did not have any of this when she was growing up. It was Lent and, one day Easter, one day Christmas, and go to confession and Mass on Sunday. That's what she got. I think a lot of people in that generation got that. And so that's what I got. And realizing, I can let you speak to how that's not the truth. But anyway, so Kendra has created all of these resources, but it started in her own home with her own creative genius. But she has really flourished it beyond, I think, even what one family could do. It's all sorts of different ideas, all sorts of wonderful things. And I'm having her on. We're dropping this during Advent because Advent is liturgical New Year. And so it's an opportunity for you to get exposed to how to do liturgical living, not just for Advent and Christmas, but really for the whole year. And what a perfect time to start. So Kendra, can you elaborate on any of that kind of liturgical living, the beauty of it, the benefit of it, anything like that for my people who maybe have never heard of the concept, who are finding me through the TOB Institute, never met you, anything like that?
Yeah, so the sort of elevator pitch of, what is liturgical living in the home is just this sort of acknowledgement that the church has created this framework for us on the church calendar that we can use to get to know the saints and important aspects of church doctrine, all through little bite-sized chunks throughout the year. And we can see the liturgical year reflected in the Mass. We can see different color vestments. We can hear different hymns that are sung during Mass. But liturgical living in the home is a way to really to bring those feast days, those observances, those differences throughout the year into our homes, so that being Catholic isn't something that we're just focused on only on Sundays or only on Christmas and Easter, but it's just part of the daily fabric of our lives. And it has really borne so much fruit in my family and really in my own personal life. And I think a lot of people are motivated to start liturgical living in the home because they have kids and they say oh no, how do I teach this to my kids? But getting a start on it earlier, and learning about how how the saints can inspire us, how the different devotions and prayers that have been recommended by different saints. It's never too early to start, and honestly, I wish I had started it earlier. Because there are so many cool, fun traditions that it would have been great to just do with a group of friends. And like you said, Advent is such a good time to start. It's just, it's the new year. And there are also just so many beautiful Advent traditions that are specifically meant to be observed in the home and not even, not specifically in churches.
Amazing. So how did you get started with liturgical living? Let's give a little bit of a background because people are probably like, whoa, where did this come from?
Yeah. So I actually read there are a couple of I call them the OG Liturgical Living in the Home books that were written in the early 60s. One called The Year in Our Children by Mary Reed Newland, and another one actually written by Maria von Trapp, called Around the Year with the Von Trapp Family. And it's beautiful, but I remember reading those books being like, this sounds great for someone else. Like, I don't know how to like bake bread. I don't like how, I don't know how to do any of these things that these women are talking about. It's, and again, they're in the 60s. So their expectations of my abilities were different than, and my homemaking skills were different than my reality. And it just seemed too overwhelming. And I thought, like, that's a great idea. Can't do that. But what really finally gave me not confidence to it, just the doggedness to give it a try, was reading historical fiction. Because you read something like Kristen Lavren's Daughter, or these cute little Christmas books. Anyway, but these old books that discussed how communities used to live and how they would observe the church calendar as this way of coming together as a community and fasting together and feasting together, and things that, if you read in, Jane Austen books, you hear about quarter days, and that your rent was due on a particular feast day. And, letters from bishops are signed on what feast day they were composed. And I just realized what a beautiful way to really make the history, this like deep deposit of faith, present in my everyday life. Like, what better way to do that than to recapture some of these cool old traditions that are part of our heritage. This is our legacy as Catholics. And I think that in an understandable desire to be more ecumenical, we've given up so much of what makes us cool and special. And I just say, like, let's go get that back. Let's make Catholicism, I like to say, let's keep Catholicism weird, and let's bring these traditions back and make being Catholic feel different than being anything else, because it really is. And so if we can live like that, then it proves it to ourselves, to our extended family, to our friends. Hey, this is something really unique and special. And even though it's as silly as we eat waffles for the Feast of the Assumption and
Annunciation.
The Annunciation.
Waffeldagen.
And right, exactly. But that's a cool old tradition. And, you can't get that anywhere else. Like, we have that. And, so I just think it's something to be proud of and to celebrate and to really enjoy.
Absolutely. Talking to you about it gets me so excited to do it. Like, you're right. Like, we have this beautiful, rich heritage that we have surrendered. And now generations of Catholics don't even know what makes them any different from Protestants, really, when it comes down to it. Except we have to go to church and we have these rules we have to follow and blah, blah, blah. But the beauty and richness is actually one of the things that makes us so unique. And I love that you're recapturing it, and you're making it easy for those of us who aren't as creative to think about what to do and how to do it. So I love, like we said, Advent is liturgical New Year. We did not make that up. That literally the church calendar restarts on the first Sunday of Advent. But what's so cool about Advent also is I feel like it's one of those times where the secular world has tapped into what the church already does. God placed these desires on our heart, and there's this universal desire, whether you know what it's from or not. So people start decorating for Christmas 6 weeks to 2 months before Christmas actually starts. They want it to last a really long time. They want this anticipation, this build up for Christmas Day, but they don't know how to do it. So they start by just decorating early and then taking everything down on the 26th, right? So I feel like Advent is a perfect time to get started, not only for liturgical New Year, but because there's probably already a desire in your heart to be doing something anyway. So let's channel that into God's design for our lives and for the church's calendar and all that stuff, and make it awesome. So what are some ideas? You mentioned that Advent is perfect because there's so many different things to do. So bearing in mind that a lot of my audience might have decorated for Christmas already, but have have a desire to do something a little different and want to understand the meaning behind it, and that my target audience does not have kids. There are probably people listening who are married. I know I have some audience members who are, but my target audience are people who are still single. Some of them are in a relationship, some of them aren't. Some of them live with roommates, some of them live at home, whatever. But bearing all those things in mind, can you give us some ideas of liturgical living for Advent in particular in their home?
Yeah, and the category of liturgical living in the home is super broad, and I use it to cover things from prayerful devotions, based in the Old Testament, like the Jesse tree, all the way to like throwing a cocktail party for Catholic New Year's Eve. So both of those things are liturgical living in the home, and both are awesome, and both can start a conversation about what we really believe as Catholics. And so I think both are really good and important. And you can explore, what's going to work for you, what's going to work for, where you are in your life. And, but so to start with, to think about some of the more devotional activities. And I'm going to lay out a whole bunch of them. And I always try to caution people, like, you probably don't want to do all of these things, but you're going to want to know what exists so that you can choose the one that's going to work for you. So a few of them are the Christmas anticipation prayer, which is sometimes called the St. Andrew Novena, but it should not be called that because it's not a novena. And it really doesn't have anything to do with St. Andrew, except that it starts on his feast day. But it's a beautiful prayer that is traditionally said 15 times a day, every day from the Feast of St. Andrew to Christmas Eve. And this is a great one if you're just looking for something to sort of bracket Advent for you, to like make it like no preparation. You can do it in the car. You can tape it to your bathroom mirror and do it while you're getting ready in the morning. And it just is something different that you're going to do each day because it's Advent. And it's a really beautiful, like sort of haunting prayer. I really like it. So that's something that's really easy to pick up. There's also, of course, the Advent wreath, which you see at Mass. But I think it's a really beautiful thing to have in the home. And it actually started as a home observance. And then was later, they came up with a blessing in order to allow it to be observed in the Mass as well. But it was in homes first.
I had no idea. How cool is that?
Yeah, it's cool. So that's something that you can, keep on your table, and, regardless of if you are eating in a big family or, on a date or by yourself, like it's beautiful to have candlelight and to watch the weeks of Advent, add up and progress. So there's no reason you can't have an Advent wreath in your home, and they are so easy to make. I just get 4 glass jar candles from the grocery store, and I cut some branches outside in my yard and arrange them in a circle on a platter, and boom, Advent wreath. It does not have to, it can be done in 10 minutes. If you want to level up a little bit from that, there's the Christmas novena, which is actually a novena because it is done for the 9 days before Christmas. So it starts on the 16th and ends on the 24th. And of course, anything that you do for 9 days, a prayerful thing that you do for 9 days counts as a novena. But there's one that we do that's in my book and on my website that was composed in 17 something, and it's really beautiful and has you repeat these old prayers and sort of trace the Old Testament and New Testament readings that help prepare us for the coming of Christmas. And I really like that it's those last 9 days to really sort of hunker down, be like, all right, it really isn't Christmas yet, but we're so close, and we're really gonna focus on these last 9 days to prepare. If you're willing to spend more than 9 days, there's the Jesse tree, which is really sort of a beefed up version of that novena that allows you to trace salvation history all the way through the beginning of the Old Testament, and just really see how all of these titles for Christ, all of these messages from the prophets really do lead us necessarily to the birth of Christ. And I have a book about that. Also, there's other, there's multiple different Jesse tree configurations. There's not just one. But then that's something that you can do in your home for the whole of Advent for just a few minutes. It just takes a few minutes to do the readings. And again, it's just finding a way to make Advent feel different than Christmas. Like, what are we doing because it's Advent? Not just, the stores all say that it's Christmas, but we know as Catholics that it's not yet. And it's okay for stores to be ready for Christmas because it's their job to sell you stuff ahead of time. And so that makes sense. But in our homes and in our hearts, we need to remember that this is that time of anticipation, that time of preparation.
I think that Jesse
Tree
is
perfect. Devotional stuff. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think that Jesse Tree is perfect for those people who really love their Christmas tree up early, because you put your tree up and then every day you add a Jesse Tree ornament. And then at the end of it, you decorate your tree on the 24th for actual Christmas. That feels like a really perfect one for people who are like, but my tree, that one feels like a really easy, I don't know, like bridge. Yeah. And your book is really great. Absolutely. I'll put a link to it. We love your book.
Thank you. And then as far as, people want to throw Christmas parties during Advent. Even the very Catholic organizations that I am a part of who know that it's Advent, they throw Christmas parties, but they call them Advent parties. But it's definitely a Christmas party, right? But it's okay. Catholics, we get to celebrate even during Advent, and there are great feast days. So if you want to throw a party, you can throw a Catholic New Year's Eve party. You can throw a St. Nicholas party. You can throw an Immaculate Conception party. And there are ways to do fun, white parties are cool, right? Throw an Immaculate Conception white party. And what would be cooler liturgical living than that?
I agree. Love it. Okay, so you mentioned the stores, and I think that's a really good bridge to the next thing I want to talk about, which is this is pretty countercultural. So there are not a lot of other feast days, maybe not, Easter, but Easter's gotten weird with the bunnies and the chicks and the eggs and stuff. But the Christmas one, it's so cultural. Christmas movies start playing on TV, Christmas music starts playing on the radio, every store you go into is playing Christmas music, basically, or the vast majority of them are. And so it's really countercultural to not do that. And I think there's this desire, it does stir your longing for true Christmas when it comes, if you orient your heart that way. But there also maybe this certain FOMO, this fear of missing out on but if I start on the 25th, everything else is gone and I'm just starting my celebration. So I think sometimes it's good to remember the benefits of doing this. What are some, why is it so worth it, right? You are sacrificing, especially if you're one of those people who's decorate full on Christmas decorations on, before Thanksgiving, it is a sacrifice to make this transition. And a few years in, you'll be able to see the benefit of it. But I think it can be helpful for people to hear on the front end, why is this worth it? So if you'd be willing to talk about some of the benefits you found in your home and your family, and just some concrete things that people can hold on to, yes, the first couple of years might be a little hard making this transition, but it is so worth it. So if you'd be willing to kind of dive into that side of it, that would be great.
Yeah, so the way that we do it is that instead of, and I used to be a day after Thanksgiving, everything goes up person, but reading these, it's the same, reading these old books. There's this adorable children's book called Christmas in Noisy Village, and it's part of a larger book called The Children of Noisy Village. And there's another one by anyway, I can't remember, but there are these books that show you how people used to use Advent as this time of preparation. So I decided just one year, all right, we're going to make this jump and we're just going to see how it goes. And we're going to wait to put the big one, you're right, is waiting to put your Christmas tree up. But if you read even just Richard Scarry Christmas books, they talk about, you putting the Christmas tree up on Christmas Eve. That was very, very standard throughout Christianity. And it's just has moved earlier and earlier over just really, the last generation or two. So we decided that, but that we would try to figure out how to observe Advent. And the way that worked for us was instead of, all right, I'm going to grab all my Christmas boxes out of the basement and I'm going to throw all my Christmas stuff up and boom, done, we're decorated for Christmas. But instead to approach it as this preparation period and to try to do more handmade things when that's possible, to do things made out of like actual, evergreen branches and paper snowflakes and silly things like that, but that I actually felt more sort of ownership of, that rather than my, just store-bought stuff that I take down and put up every year, to actually decide, all right, this year I'm going to try to figure out how to make my own wreath. And I'm just going to go outside and cut some branches and like wrap it up with wire. And, it's going to look wonky, but I will like it because I did it. And then our home gets a little more Christmassy, on whether you just add things every Sunday or whether you're able to sort of, put something new up each day. It really, it gives it that sort of sense of growing anticipation, sense of coming towards completion. And then also, I'm not sick of everything. My Christmas tree isn't all dead and dried out. Now, I live in Los Angeles, so, it's hot here. But everybody has indoor heating. So I assume everybody's Christmas tree is super dried out if you're going to have had it out for a month already. And so putting that Christmas tree up on Christmas Eve, there's just that great joy of like, here it finally is. And then we leave it up through Christmas. Now, if you can't wait and you got to put your Christmas tree up early, I understand that. But then you can't take it down on Christmas, on the day after Christmas. You have to leave it up so that you can, acknowledge that we are celebrating the birth, and I think that it's so important to think about it like that a pregnant woman can't just go ahead and like move everything up. You have to wait, and then when the baby is born, like that's when there's this this celebration, and then it's the days after where we have all this joy and people coming to visit and sending gifts. And so it's that, it's that whole time period. And I try to seat myself actually in the history of it, in the actual historical event of it.
Did you get pushback from your kids that first year when you like made that leap?
No, they were little enough that it wasn't that big a deal. And I am not a person who has a great affinity for doing crafts with little kids. I like doing crafts, but I would prefer to do projects on my own and not have as much help. But for whatever reason, because, you're spending more time indoors and the kids have time off of school. And it really is that one time of year when I'm like, all right, let's do this. Let's try to, roll homemade candles, or let's bake cookies together. And this is something that you could do with neighbor kids. You could do with nieces and nephews, and make a handprint reindeer. Like do that. Even though I'm genuinely probably not going to do that stuff with them the rest of the year, but I'll do it with them during Advent, and then all of that stuff just gets added a little bit at a time to the house.
I love that. So, again, knowing that most of my listeners are kind of in their own discernment, do you have like a practical tip that you could give my people listening to start today? So this one will drop on the 8th, December 8th. It's the beautiful feast day today. So you could go off that, or you could just go off of it being Advent, because some people aren't going to listen on the day that it drops. So what are your thoughts on like something practical? I love giving my listeners like a practical takeaway.
So I would say that the heart of all of this is just to find something in your life that's going to make Advent feel different than Christmas. How is Christmas going to be different than Advent was? And whether that's decoration in your home, whether that's prayers that you do, or some sort of devotion, just finding that one thing that's going to make make it feel different so that you're going to know that this is the Advent season and then that is the Christmas season.
Perfect. So big, loose window here. You can choose whatever that is for you. But I really like that. Like, okay, what for your life, what does Christmas look like? And then how do you do something different in Advent? That's great. You'd also mentioned that you think you started when you had kiddos, but you think it would have been really fun to do it when you were not married yet, or, even single, even maybe before that, before you were dating. So do you have a couple of things that you think could be really perfect, or like that you would have told yourself, like, ooh, start this? Is it some of the things you've mentioned? Is there anything you haven't mentioned yet? Just to give some, I don't know, just I like that perspective of like, if you could go back, what would you choose?
Yeah. So for me, I have always liked, throwing little parties, and I love the idea of, having a theme for the party so that you can pick foods that would be, funny in some way, or have a cocktail that is appropriate. There's a book called Drinking with the Saints, and it has liturgical themed cocktails. And I just think, how fun is that to have a reason for a celebration, and to just say like, oh, what's coming up? Let's all get together and do this fun thing because of this saint. So it just gives you a good excuse to get together. And, I love that. I love that the Catholic Church gives that to us.
I love it. That's perfect. And I think it's great too, because you don't have kids yet. And so you can have the freedom to like have a cocktail party, and you don't have to think about some of the things you have to think about once you're in your vocation and you have kiddos. So I love that, capitalizing on doing some of these really fun things with your friends and community, and tying it to the liturgical year. That is so awesome. Well, Kendra, thank you so much for being willing to take the time. And I am so hopeful we have some people who've never met you before, because they're in for such a treat when they like rabbit hole into your blog, into your resources, into your books. So prolific. There's so many things they can choose. So I'll put some links, you guys, for you in the whatever it's called on YouTube, the show note equivalent on YouTube. I could never get that right. And I'll put some links that you can find Kendra and Kendra's resources, and that'll be really great. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Kendra.
Thank you so much. Great to talk to you.
You too. And all of you, I hope you enjoyed this. You can clearly see my excitement for it. I think you can see Kendra's excitement for it. This is just, it adds a level of richness and beauty to your life. I cannot even explain. You just have to try it for yourself. And like we said, Advent is the perfect time to start. You have a few weeks left of Advent before Christmas. So you can make the decision to do something that sets Advent apart, and then really get to participate in that feasting of Christmas. So I hope you have fun. And until next time, stay close to the heart of Jesus and be not afraid. Bye.